David, and I'm here on a Friday evening, the evening before Halloween. So I have a little historical message for you, but first I need to talk about a couple spiritual issues that are relevant, okay? Because it is the day before Halloween, and we know Halloween is a time where spiritual activity is at a high, and a lot of it is especially some evil spiritual activity. And this Halloween coincides with a full moon, and you may say, well, I'm not superstitious. Well, it's not superstition, but we also know for a fact that during a full moon, the spiritual activity, and I don't mean the good kind, but the bad stuff, is usually at its height. And finally, we have an upcoming election, and we know that this Halloween, lots and lots of bad people are out there praying spells against our president and against our country. So in my lifetime, elections have always been between the two political parties, both of which basically shared the same goals, okay? They believed in prosperity, freedom, safety, love of God, love of our country. And the two political parties which we chose between basically had different ideas about how to reach these goals. But now we have an election where one party would uphold these values while the other party completely has abandoned them and turned against them. So it's not just we have our common goals but different ways of achieving them, but we have completely different goals, okay? And we know that the Democratic Party, basically they don't want to uphold the Constitution. Many of them would actually choose to rewrite the Constitution. They're thinking of and talking about rewriting history, the cancel culture, and the 1691 Project. They'll remove our freedoms, take away our rights. I mean, they'll take away our amendment anyway, so rewrite it as they wish. They even attempt to remove God from our culture. And this election is a big choice we have to make. It's not just one party or the other. It's good against evil, okay? And I had this message sent to me a few days ago, and it says, and I'll show it on the screen here, it says, thousands of witches plotting to cast spell on Donald Trump on Halloween. And you can see that I responded, and you see it in green there. It says, let's spread this message. Well, thousands of witches and Satanists cast spells. Millions of us will be praying for our president and for our country. Okay? And we need to realize that we are in a spiritual battle. If we read Ephesians 6:12, I've read this like so many times over the last 15 or 20 years, and it's more relevant now than ever. And we read, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms, okay? It's a spiritual struggle. And what do you do about the spiritual struggle? Well, if you read a couple of verses before that in Ephesians, St. Paul tells us we need to put on the armor of God now more than ever. Put on the armor of God. We need to be praying. We need to be standing up for good, okay? So that was my introductory comments I wanted to share with you. Now we'll look at this video that I had originally planned. I'll open this up with a speech made by President Ronald Reagan way before he was president. He spoke these words in 1961. He was elected president in 1980, okay? And I'll show you the clip from the beginning part of this talk, and then I'll wait till the very end and we'll do the rest of this little clip that shows the rest of it at the end. Okay, so here's President Reagan.
Our founding fathers here in this country brought about the only true revolution that has ever taken place in man's history. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another set of rulers. But only here did that little band of men so advance beyond their time that the world has never seen their like since, evolve the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and the ability to determine our own destiny.
And I used to work in a school in like the richest part of town, River Oaks area, and I could leave work some days, and I'd be driving towards the main road, the freeway through the neighborhood. You'd see these huge houses, just extravagant. They had their quarters for their servants, probably for what one time had been their slaves years, 150 years ago, and just extravagant luxury beyond luxury. And you get a little bit out of the neighborhood and turn down the road toward the freeway, and I see people that were living under the freeway, didn't even have a house, and begging on the corner for money so they could get their next meal or whatever it is that they were looking for next. And I'd think to myself, how can this be that in a country with as much as we have, there should be some people with just so much more than they need and others with just nothing? And it's just not fair. It really isn't. And you wonder, how does this type of thing come about, okay? How does this great division of gap there? And to understand this, we need to look back at the early days of our capitalism. And what made, in the early days of our capitalism and our democracy, what made our country move forward in such a wonderful way? And the answer is it was, ambition, human ambition, the desire to work hard to get ahead, okay? But as it turns out, the same human ambition that made our country great in the beginning could also, at the extreme, be the thing that leads to our downfall if we're not careful. Because ambition can be looked at as a continuum, okay? And I'll call it the ambition continuum. Right in the middle, we have healthy ambition. You work hard to get ahead. Share your blessings. The hard work is not just for yourself, but for your community, okay? So it's all about working hard to do better and better yourself and those around you. Now, along this continuum, on one end, if you go far to the right, you'll see altruism, okay? That's where your pure, unselfish work for the good of others, for the good of the world. Most of us are not there, but we should have a bit. It's a virtue that we should at least try to have some of in our life, okay? But if you go to the other extreme of ambition, it's just greed. The desire to get ahead and to get more and more, and eventually it just becomes greed, okay? And that greed, which started out as the ambition that made our country great, could be the thing that tears our country down, okay? Now, how will we deal with this? Well, it's part of human nature, okay? The Israelites had some rules that God gave them because God knows human nature. God made us, okay? And God understands this desire to have more and the greed that exists in the hearts of human beings, okay? And if you look in Exodus here, okay, from the book of Exodus, the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven, and every day the people shall go out and gather a day's portion, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. And Moses told the people, this is what the Lord commanded. Every man gather as much as you need for your family. And then the people of Israel did so. They gathered some more, some less, according to their needs, that no man leave any of this till the morning. Okay, so what the law of God is basically saying that Moses gave the people is, don't go and take more than you need. Because you can see the people, the manna comes down from heaven, go out and gather it. People might say, oh, I'm going to get a lot of it. What if the manna doesn't come tomorrow? I better gather a whole bunch. Get lots and lots of it so my family has enough. The people that haven't got, that's their problem. And you see greed enters in, and the lack of trust also. When you want to gather extreme excess, we're not placing our trust in God. We place our trust in God. You don't need to gather an extreme excess. You place your trust that God will provide. Okay? But a more interesting Old Testament passage is from the book of Leviticus, which talks about the idea of a Jubilee year, which the Israelites had. In the Jubilee year was every 50 years. Now they started with every 7 years. So every 7 years certain things happened. They would give the fields, the farmlands a rest, and because the land gets worn down, and some deaths were canceled after 7 years. But then you go through 7 cycles of 7 years, so 7 sevens, 49 years, and the 50th year was a full Jubilee year. And here's what happened in the Jubilee year, okay? There was to be no agricultural work. All land property was to revert back to its original owner, okay? All debts were canceled. Slaves were set free, okay? So land going back to so if you bought land from someone, it was really like renting it, which is why the Israelites, if you bought land 40 years before a Jubilee year, that means you're going to use it for 40 years before it went back. It was more, pay a lot more. If you bought it 2 years before a Jubilee year, you were going to have it 2 years and it's gone. So the land value changed as the Jubilee year approached, because in the Jubilee year, it was like a complete reset, okay? A complete reset. Everything goes, redistribution of wealth, you might call it. And when you think about it, and you think what the condition of our country is, you're tempted to say, well, maybe we need a redistribution of wealth. Maybe we need a reset. Maybe, you say, well, maybe Obama had it right. Maybe, Biden and whatever, Elon Omar and these people, maybe they're right. Maybe we need a reset. Cancel culture. You think that. It's tempting to look that way, because, how do you explain such wealth and then so many people without anything? But yet, I don't think that's the answer. Because if you go with these people who want to reset and cancel, you're looking for a very bleak future. They're going to bring about a world where you'll be controlled, surveilled, okay? Your freedoms will be taken from you. And as these leaders who talk about this reset want to reset yours and mine, they will maintain their elite position. They're not giving up what they got, okay? So that's not the answer. So then we seem like we're in a position where, well, what's the solution? And you wonder, well, what about the founding fathers of our country? Did they make a mistake when they set up our government and gave us a constitution? Did they not see the possibility of such a situation arising? Well, actually, they did. They did. Many founding fathers wanted to address these concerns and wrote about these concerns. So let's just take a look at what a few of our founding fathers said about our country and our Constitution. Okay. John Adams, in a speech to the military in 1798, warned his fellow countrymen, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the governance of any other. Noah Webster, author of the first American Speller and the first dictionary, said, "The Christian religion in its purity is the basis, or rather the source of all genuine freedom in government. No civil government of a republican form can exist and can be durable in which the principles of religion have not a controlling influence." Gouverneur Morris, the penman and signer of the Constitution and the writer of the preamble, said this: "In avoiding the extremes of despotism or anarchy, the only ground of hope must be on the morals of the people. I believe that religion is the only solid basis of morals, and the morals are the only possible support of free government. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion and the duties of man towards God." Benjamin Franklin, signer of the Declaration of Independence, said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters." And George Washington, General of the Revolutionary Army, first President of the United States of America, and father of our nation, said, "Religion and morality are the essential pillars of our society." So our Constitution only works in a moral culture that honors God and follows the natural law and the commandments of God. Now, for the past 3 decades, most rulers and most of the rules and regulations of our country have taken God and morality out of our culture. Religious monuments are removed from our public areas. Planned Parenthood provides millions of abortions with funding of taxpayers' money. Merry Christmas is replaced with Happy Holidays, and the Christmas tree in the White House became a holiday tree during Obama's time there. Schools no longer have Christmas vacation now, it's a holiday vacation. In fact, President Obama insists on any religious symbols being covered when giving speeches in Catholic universities, saying that some people may be offended. He has to cover them up. At Georgetown University, at Notre Dame, anything that shows Christianity can't be shown because, heaven forbid, someone might be offended. And yet, he has no problem standing in front of Planned Parenthood advertisements while giving his talks. And those of us who are offended, really, we didn't say. And what do we say? We allow these things to happen. So there's much more I could tell you. It's important to note that while many people realize how unfair this was, we allowed these things to happen, believing there was nothing we could do. Then, almost out of nowhere, comes President Donald J. Trump. Amazingly, we have a president who wants to return God, morality, patriotism, and family values back to the prominent place they belong in our culture, and the mainstream politicians and media work against everything he tries to accomplish. They say he divides the country. Well, our country is certainly split. Through 3 decades of removing God from our culture, our Constitution now seems to no longer work. The radical liberals push the cancel culture. They want to reset, overthrow what we have and start from scratch. Rewrite the Constitution because they'll say it doesn't work. The Founding Fathers wrote that our Constitution only works in a moral and God-fearing country. This does not mean we need a new Constitution. President Trump offers a better plan. Don't throw out the Constitution. Bring back God and patriotism and morality and family values. It was just after World War II that Joseph Stalin, the leader of communist Russia, was quoted as saying, "America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is threefold. It's patriotism, its morality, and its spiritual life. If we can undermine these 3 areas, America will collapse from within." Well, during the past 50 years, patriotism in our country has almost vanished, making a slight comeback after September 11, 2001, and then fading again. During these same 50 years, solid morality has taken the backseat to moral relativism. Spirituality has fared a little bit better, but religion has been completely removed from our government. This is done under the guise of separation of church and state. We are rarely reminded of this truth. Our founding fathers insisted on this separation of church and state, not to keep the church out of the government, but to protect the church from the government interference. We read in our First Amendment of our Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, with Donald Trump as president, enthusiasm for our country, love of God, and embracing of our family values have made a huge comeback. For this enthusiasm to be more than a temporary phenomenon, we have to find a way to transmit these values to our young citizens. Because for most of this century, the 21st century, school programs have been steeped in moral relativism and have schools have offered a curriculum that undermines family values. Well, the schools distance themselves more and more from Christian values. So let's return to the words of our country's founding fathers regarding education.
Benjamin Rush,
Franklin, signer of the Declaration of Independence, said, "The only foundation for a useful education in a republic is to be an aid in religion. Without religion, there could be no virtue. Without virtue, there could be no liberty, and liberty is the object and life of all republican governments. Without religion, I believe that learning does real mischief to the morals and principles of mankind." And Fisher Ames, the author of the final words of the First Amendment, wrote, Why should not the Bible regain the place it once held as a school book? Its morals are pure, its examples captivating and noble. The reverence for the sacred book that is thus early impressed lasts long, and probably, if not impressed in infancy, never takes a firm hold in the mind. So, we have to choose here. Vote for freedom, and the whole world is looking at this election. We stand between, at the brink of losing our freedom or hanging on to it. And a vote for Donald Trump is a vote for freedom for the whole world. This freedom is so valuable, so precious, and we're like hanging by a thread for losing it if we're not careful here. Okay, so I would like to now close with some more of the words of this Ronald Reagan speech that we'll play right now. Thank you for listening to this message. God bless all of you. God bless America. If you haven't already done so, please get out and vote. Spread the word. Vote for freedom. Vote for freedom. Don't vote for this cancel culture. Okay, thank you.
But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free. Thank you.